Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Wrestling with Johners, and we are live as we are with all of our episodes. Got another fantastic guest for a Wednesday evening, none other than the King, Hari Singh. King, welcome to the Wrestling with Johners podcast. Thank you for gracing us with your presence. How are you doing, sir?
Great. It's great to be here officially rather than just gate crashing, which is like I did last time when I just gate crashed somebody else's. So apologies to Crowley for that.
No apologies needed. And I love the captions at the bottom because he was down there as the twat. You was down there as the king. It was just hilarious. And if you don't know what we're on about, check out Charles Crowley's interview from February, I think it was, and it was it was just after he became Wrestle Carnival champion, of course, and it was to hype up the match that didn't happen between Hari Singh and Charles Crowley, and RJ crashed Charles's interview at the very end there. There was a nice exchange between the two of them. That was really, really good fun. But thanks for coming on the show officially, and this is going to be all about you. And for anybody watching at home that wants to get in touch with the King, wants to get in touch with Hari Singh, you can do. Just send them through, send your questions through to us using your chosen device, and we do our very best to bring them up during this live broadcast. But first of all, RJ, I want to talk to you about 2022, or more in particular, the last 12 months since UK wrestling's come back. And I tend to bring up this question with a lot of my guests because, you know, we went through quite a strange time with no UK wrestling for best part of 18 months, came back in the summer of 2021. I mean, if you were to sum up your last 12 months in a nutshell, kind of how would you describe your kind of 2021 going into 2022?
Genuinely, I feel like this is some of the most fun I've had in my entire sort of many years of wrestling. I'd say the last 12 months have been some of the most fun. I think my attitude going into wrestling, just being there to enjoy it, being able to work with younger talent and, you know, just enjoy the experience of wrestling, not worrying so much about things like, oh my gosh, is this company booking me, or have I got these eyes on me? And I think that's probably an experience and an age thing. And you know, coming in, being past all that and being able to say, you know, with the years that I've got left, however long that might be, I'm just going to enjoy it. I'm just going to do stuff that I enjoy. I'm not going to put huge amounts of pressure on myself to be, you know, I've got to be the best or I've got to be at the top. I'm just there, you know, I'm quite happy with that I'm there to contribute. I'm there to help make shows the best they can be and play my part on shows. So yeah, it's been a massively enjoyable 12 months, I have to say.
Yeah, and you've been as busy as ever, wrestling the top talent around the UK. You are highly regarded as one of the best pros in the UK yourself. But to, let's say, 21 years in the business, RJ, this coming November will be that anniversary. And like I say, the pace of your matches, the pace of your style doesn't appear to have changed at all after all these years, and in particular 2022, certainly from what I've seen. But how is the body holding up? You know, can you take the punishment as well as you used to be able to? Give us a kind of a bit of an insight into, you know, the physicality and how you handle it in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely a young man's game. It's quite funny, like particularly being in the locker room now. I tend to be one of the oldest people in the locker room now at the grand age of 41. I tend to be a lot older than quite a lot of the other talent in there as well. And I get young guys coming up to me and it's like, I used to watch you when I was a kid. What? I used to watch you a kid when I was in the when you were in FWA. Yeah, like my dad used to take me to FWA and watch you when I was a kid. I was like, oh my gosh, right, okay, I've hit that age, you know. And there was something that struck me really that I thought was really funny. Like back in 2014, I wrestled Tatanka back in 2014, which was, you know, I had a great experience. You know, it was one of my favourite matches I had at the time. And I remember saying, "Oh yeah, this is Tatanka was one of my childhood heroes. This is fantastic." Grew up watching people like Tatanka in the WWF. That was the era I grew up and stuff like that. So, zip forward to 2022. I just saw a young Irish wrestler called LJ Cleary has just posted he's got a match coming up with his childhood hero, and his childhood hero is Zack Ryder. I was like, oh god, like.
Yeah.
If that's his childhood hero, and again, I'm not saying that as in, oh no, you can't have Zack Ryder, but the fact that's how old you are is really, really telling. So, I mean, I'm probably not as quick as I used to be, and things stay sore for longer. Yeah. I think these days, but I am sensible in that respect as well. I'm not reckless. I don't think I'm reckless with what I do. I'm not doing things that are beyond what I'm capable of and what my body's capable. My body very, very quickly tells me when things aren't right and when I need to, perhaps ease back a bit. Yeah. I say that. I mean, a couple of months ago, I did a street fight. I was being dropped on the floor and all sorts. So
That's it. But I mean, we talk more about some of the younger talent across the UK and kind of who you might want to get in the ring with over the next few months to a year. But we'll talk about more of that a bit later on. I want to talk about some of what I consider to be some of your best matches since you've returned. One match that I caught a little while ago and rewatched it yesterday was this match here, back from last November. Yourself versus Hari Singh, and I'm sure Hari will say the same. That probably one of the highlights of his career, one of the best matches of his career. But watching it back yesterday in preparation for this, it's such a great match, an action-packed match, but full of drama, close near falls, really technically proficient match. Lots of emotion. Hari cut a very, very heartfelt promo after the match. About yourself, but I urge anybody that's kind of watching this to check that out on YouTube. Hari Singh versus RJ Singh from last November, Wrestling Resurgence. But give us your kind of thoughts back to that match. And like I say, that was last year, but an incredible match and certainly a highlight, I would say, of your last 12 months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was super excited because Hari and I had tagged together a bunch of times. And we worked together, and I know Hari's, worked really hard on his ring ability. He's worked really hard on his physique and stuff, being in the gym a lot. He's kind of doing all the right things to push himself as a performer. So to be given that opportunity to work with him in Resurgence was absolutely fantastic. I was thrilled that we would get to wrestle each other, and just to kind of be able to tell the kind of story that I wanted to tell with Hari, which was this kind of very two wrestlers, one from one generation, one from another generation, meeting for the first time in the ring and being able to kind of, let our styles mix, let each other kind of shine and things like that. With the ultimate thing of Hari, really, really shine, because I kind of like, to me, Hari is like the T1000 to my T800. He is like the younger, better, faster model. And if I had my time again, if I could start all over again and start from scratch, I would want to be like Hari. I'd want to do what Hari's doing now and how he portrays his character, his heritage, and his ring style as well. I would, if I had my time again, I'd want to be like him. So that's kind of how the match was kind of portrayed, really. That we were, like I said, these crossings of two generations. And yeah, it certainly was absolutely one of my favourite matches coming out of last year.
Yeah, such an incredible talent, and like I say, I think his best years are yet to come, and such an incredible talent. And another match that struck me as being one of your better matches, and a different type of match altogether to the one we've just spoken about. This one here against Zak Zodiac, and this was not that far gone. It was probably only last month, August, for CXW. And this was more of it struck me as being more of a traditional British wrestling match, and you had your heel, you had your villain, you had your baby face. The fans were definitely into the action, and they were quite vocal. But I'd say you're two incredible pros there, and Zak Zodiac, like I say, I wouldn't say underrated, but I think, you know, definitely kind of overlooked in many ways. One of the best pros in the UK, and has been for many years. But that match was a lot of fun as well. And like I say, a different type of match to the one you had with Hari, but still, you know, an incredible match between two fantastic pros.
Yeah, I mean, what was great, and I joked about this when I saw Zak earlier that day on the show, and I said, we joked and said this is every 10 years or so, it's or at least every decade we get to wrestle each other, because I think I wrestled Zak. I must have been in my early 20s, and Zak was about 16. One of the first matches we did together. Very different. He was like a real junior heavyweight at that point. I remember kind of throwing him around a lot. Another 10 years later, back, I think it must have been about 2012 or 2013, we wrestled again, which was great. Down in Clacton, we had a match in Clacton, which was really fantastic. And that was great. We didn't really plan a lot in that match, so we kind of talked some ideas through, and then we had the match, and we just had really good chemistry. And I felt like all the couple of times I've been in the ring with Zak about 4 times now. I think each time we've had a really good chemistry. So with the match with CXW, he came in, we said hello, we made a joke and said, we'll do it again in another 10 years time. And I didn't see him then for the first half of the show, because Zak is such a student of the game, as it were. It's a great phrase, that Zak is such a student of the game. Zak went and just watched the first half of the show, because he wanted to see what the crowd were reacting to. He wanted to know what everyone else had done up to that point. He wanted to make our match unique. And we were on a 9-10 match card, and it's quite hard to carve out your niche when you've got that many other that many other matches. So I think what Zak doesn't get credit for is that he sat and studied everything, and he kind of watched each match really intently. And then came back at half time and said, right, let's talk some stuff. And we chatted up some ideas. And I think what was great about that is that Zak trusted me an incredible amount to kind of say, he goes, look, you know what to do. If it goes wrong, you know what to do. We know what we're doing, so we don't need to worry. And actually, every time I've wrestled Zak, I've always felt really relaxed. I haven't had to worry, because I know in a pinch Zak would know what to do, and I know what to do, and we could work our way there. So again, I think we just had really good chemistry. And I think you do find wrestlers out of every 10 12 matches, you'll find one person you're like, I just had really good chemistry with them. And that's certainly what I felt with Zak, and that's why the match came out so enjoyable, I think, for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And some other notable mentions. I was present at Sacrifice Pro's 5th anniversary, and you wrestled the very talented Payne there in a tremendous match, a really fun match. And CJ Carter, and you wrestled CJ Carter not that long ago for Pro Wrestling East in one of his last matches, because I think he's recently retired, which is a huge shame. But obviously, we send our best wishes out to CJ there. But let's say, any other kind of matches that you've really enjoyed and been proud of in 2022 so far, then, AJ?
Yeah, I mean, going back to 21, tail end of 21 as well. I had a really enjoyable match with Sunset Skip in UBW. It was on their Halloween show, so we both got face painted, and I think I had a Thanos costume on, and stuff like that. We just had a really fun match for the audience. It was a very family orientated crowd. I came out dressed up as Thanos, had the gauntlet and everything, and stuff like that. We just had a really fun heel face dynamic kind of match, which the crowd was just super into. So that was my sort of, and it was one of my last ones heading in 21, which was great. And then in 2022, I had the aforementioned street fight I had with Tiger Ali in Wrestling Society, which was kind of a culmination of the first 4 shows, which was for the 4FW Junior Heavyweight title, which I was the champion. And we spent those 4 shows just building towards this street fight, which I think happened in April, and it was really fun. Really enjoyable. We had told this story running all the way up until that street fight, and then the street fight was the culmination. It just went off exactly as I'd hoped. Great response from the crowd as well. So it was, that was definitely one of my top ones.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about Wrestling Society then, because we spoke a little bit off air, and they're a new promotion based out of the Southwest and South Wales as well. Their first show was in January. I think they're about 5 or 6 shows in, so we're still a relatively new promotion. but doing some amazing stuff. And they're a bit of an offshoot from 4FW, which was a promotion that I was a huge fan of. I lived and worked in Swindon in the mid-2010s and used to watch a lot of the shows, saw a lot of yourself in 4FW, got a lot of really, really fond memories. And Wrestling Society is kind of carried on from 4FW. But give us a bit of, for anybody that's not heard of Wrestling Society, give us a bit of an overview about what is kind of what it's about and what makes it kind of unique as well, because I think it's put on some great shows, some top names, some incredible talent. It just seems to be getting better and better with every show.
Yeah. So, I mean, jumping back to 4FW, there was probably a time I would have considered, from sort of 2017 up until 2020, I probably considered 4FW as like my home promotion. And obviously not in the sense that I was trained there, but it was the promotion that I kind of threw myself into the most during that period of being there. I suppose going back even a bit more to 2015 is when I started working with them. And it was a promotion I was heavily invested in myself. I came in under a manager's role because I'd taken a break from wrestling, so I came as a manager and eventually came on as a wrestler, and we just had some amazing times at 4FW, in the Mecca in Swindon, which is an incredible venue. It's an absolutely beautiful venue, so it was wonderful. And I think over the kind of pandemic period, Dave, who was the owner of 4FW, just decided that his time was up running 4FW, and he was ready to move on from it, essentially. So it was a real shame, because again, it was a really beloved promotion for me. Beloved promotion, beloved venue. I loved going to Swindon. I loved being one of the biggest heels in the company. It was absolutely great. So I was a bit downhearted when it closed, but it was kind of an understandable one. So then Nadia Sapphire, who had worked for 4FW for a long time, decided she wanted to continue the legacy of 4FW and start promoting shows in Swindon, in Portishead, and in Cardiff. So Nadia started, I say at the beginning of this year, she started promoting Wrestling Society. Kind of, as I say, it's kind of an offshoot of 4FW, because we started using the 4FW Junior Heavyweight Championship, which I obviously still held from my time there. And she wanted it to be a place for all the guys who were regulars in 4FW to have somewhere to work and to be able to, keep doing their thing. So, and I believe she's like the first solo female promoter, like I don't know if ever so. Or in the country. She's like the first to be running shows. So and she, like I said, she assembled a really good crew of like the regular talent at 4FW, with a lot of new talent from around the country. So again, currently I'm in a stable with Nadia and Rishi Ghosh, and I think Rishi Ghosh and Harry as well was in that stable, known as the Monarchy. And we have an absolute blast with things like that. And there's a great mix of talent sort of coming from that end of the country, but also people like Lee Hunter is coming down from the Midlands, obviously, to work with us as well. And I'm fortunate, I've kind of got the link to UBW, which is based near to me. So I've been fortunate, I've been able to bring some of the UBW talent over. So Sunset Skip, Ricky Calve, Tommy Kyle has been there, and most recently Trim and Roswell as well, who are all great talents who have come from UBW. They've come and started working as well. So you get this really nice melting pot of talent from different parts of the country in there as well. So it's been a great experience so far. And Nadia's got a really good sense of promotion. It's what she does for a living. She promotes events and things like that. So she kind of knows what goes into that side of it. And she asked me, a couple of shows in, would I help with like sort of the booking side of it as well? So I've been kind of managing that part of it, and we've just really enjoyed the show. The whole crew are there just to put on a really good show and just do the best we can for the audience. Yeah,
and I honestly believe that come the end of the year and all of the end of year awards, I think Wrestling Society could be on many people's lists for being best new promotion. And certainly, if I had a vote, I would certainly vote it best new promotion. It's doing some wonderful things, and many more great shows to come in 2021, I'm sure. But just kind of inching back to 4FW very, very briefly, like I say, it's my home promotion when I lived and worked in Swindon. Saw you kind of many, many times there. But I mean, some of your accolades, a former 2-time 4FW junior heavyweight champion. And of course, that bout has now been carried over into Wrestling Society, and you've been very much part of the mix when it comes to that title. Of course, you've had tremendous matches and feuds with the likes of JD Knights, the Hunter brothers. You were part of the Three Kings, weren't you, with Tiger Ali and Rishi Ghosh? And you're in the corner. You mentioned your management role. You're in the corner of Tiger Ali during some of his incredible matches against the likes of John Morrison, Doug Williams, and so many more fantastic opponents that Tiger Ali was put up against. And then going back to Wrestling Society, because, like I say, you've got Jim Hunter there, you've got Tiger Ali there, you've got Rishi. So, like I say, a lot of the feuds and a lot of that kind of storyline has carried over from one promotion into another for that continuity. So for any kind of old 4FW fans, and I know it was a very, very popular promotion back in the mid to late 2010s, like I say, Wrestling Society is definitely the one for you. But you mentioned, I think off air, in fact, during this broadcast, Tiger Ali and that street fight you had, and he's such an incredible talent. You know each other very, very well. But give us a bit more of an insight into your feud or your relationship with Tiger Ali, because he's a wrestler that not many people really kind of talk about on a kind of a national scale, but he really is kind of like a fantastic talent, isn't he?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, he had his basis in Swindon in 4FW is kind of where he came up through wrestling. He was contracted as one of the sort of the standby wrestlers for the UK WWE United Kingdom tournament. He was there in part of the mix. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. I think he did a dark match. But there were several wrestlers who kind of were sort of backup wrestlers, as it were. And unfortunately, unfortunately, it didn't go much further than that, which is a real shame. But he's had loads of experience in Mexico. I know Ultimate Dragon was a massive fan of Tiger, brought him over to Mexico several times to wrestle for his promotion in Mexico. And one thing I don't think many people talk about. So in 2016. 4FW tried to book Cody Rhodes, pardon me, back when Cody Rhodes was still very independent at that point. And it fell through once. They then tried to book Cody Rhodes again in 2017, in January of 2017, and again it fell for a second time. And very fortunately, Kenny Omega took that place instead.
I remember it very well.
Because Kenny Omega had wrestled for 4FW right back in the early, possibly even the late 2000s into the early 2000s. Kenny Omega, before he was a very big name, was over here working for 4FW. So 4FW contacted Kenny and said, "Look, we've lost Cody Rhodes. Can you come instead?" And Kenny, pretty much from what I understand, and this was when this is after Wrestle Kingdom, where he'd had that really, the 5-star, 6-star, whatever it was with Okada. People were like, "Is he going to leave?" But his contract was up. Is he going to leave? Is he going to get a WWE? So there was a massive hype surrounding Kenny Omega at that point. And then all of a sudden, here he is in Swindon at the Mecca, and he has a one-on-one match with Tiger Ali. Which me and Rishi got involved. We were involved in that match as well on the outside, and it's incredible. I think it's on YouTube. I think you can find it on YouTube if you search Tiger Ali versus Kenny Omega. It's incredible because Kenny Omega, obviously very experienced wrestler, but Tiger holds up his end beautifully, and it's a really just fun match to watch. So I'd highly recommend anyone check that out.
Yeah, and just very, very briefly on Tiger Ali, I think probably my favourite ever match was him versus Doug Williams. And I think it was probably 2015 or 2016. And there was yourself and Rishi on the outside. And that match just blew the roof off the Mecca. And I don't know if it's available, but if you ever kind of get your hands on Tiger Ali versus Doug Williams, it was an incredible match. And I told him a couple of days later when I had a chance to see him. It was just another day in the office for Tiger Ali, but I just don't realise how special that match was. Yeah. But another highlight for yourself, Jay, of 2022 is being back inside a Progress ring for the first time in over 3.5 years. That must have been quite a moment for you when you were invited to be part of Roy Johnson's Everything Patterned London. I think it was March this year, around their 10th anniversary kind of build-up. And you were part of this tag match here, weren't you? And there was yourself and Jordan Saeed against Sugar Dunkerton and Darius Lockhart and the 8-7. Tell us how it felt for yourself. And like I say, you were part of the original Progress all the way back from 2012. I think your first match of Progress was Chapter 2. And you were part of Progress all the way through up until 2018 or thereabouts. But tell us what emotions you must have felt kind of being invited to be part of that show and then kind of stepping back inside a Progress ring for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's always great to be in Progress, because it's still such a high profile promotion. So it's it's great to be involved in that. But for me, the big honour was being part of Everything Patterned, having been a part of the first one that took place in Resurgence. So to be asked back a second time was just amazing. I think Everything Patterned is such an important part of pro wrestling. And I hope it continues. I know obviously they held another version most recently, just, the weekend just gone as we record this now. And, what Roy Johnson has done cannot be understated when it comes to wrestlers of colour having an opportunity to be a showcase, to have a show where they can really showcase their talents. And like I said, to be, especially on the first Everything Patterned, where it was predominantly black wrestlers, and on the first Everything Patterned, I would think I was the only non-black wrestler to be invited onto the show, which I thought was a huge honour personally. So to then be invited back again for a second time, when actually there was a broader spectrum of people of colour on that second show, was just really amazing. It was great to be back in the ring again with Sugar Dunkerton and Darius Lockhart. Of course, I wrestled it at the first Everything Patterned, so getting a second chance to wrestle them again was amazing. They're both amazing professionals. They are both just incredible guys as well. To be there alongside Jordan Saeed as well, who I've been tagging with. We just started to tag before the pandemic, and then we've managed to sort of build up our steam as a team and support each other, especially in purpose wrestling. Which has been brilliant. So to be in there with him, and then again, and then on the other side of the ring, I've got Roy Johnson himself and Alexander Roth, who's one of the most underrated talents in the country at the moment, I think, who just got his sort of singles debut in Progress again, just as the weekend we just passed as well. So I think it was an incredible experience. It was great again to be around that locker room. I hope that Everything Pattern continues across other promotions. I hope other promotions support it for the right reasons and help give it a platform, because I think it truly deserves it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just focusing on your tag partner, you mentioned him there, Jordan Saeed, and you did tag with him a couple of times before the pandemic and quite a few times since the return of BritWres a year ago. But he's an incredible talent, isn't he? He's got a fantastic look. And 2022 is really kind of being a bit of a breakout year for him. And he's picking up a couple of singles championships up and down the country. So doing really, really good. And like I say, the two of you are kind of becoming a bit of a renowned tag team in your own right.
Yeah, Jordan is just brilliant, and he's, like you said, I think you're right. 2022 has kind of been his breakout year. He's so much more comfortable in himself as a wrestler, as a performer. He's a lot more assured of himself this year. I think he kind of found his niche and where he's most comfortable, and again, he's found that I think a little bit of me's rubbed off on him, in that, like, do the shows that make you happy, do the things that make you happy in wrestling. And I have a huge thanks to Jordan, because due to Jordan, he actually hooked up me going out to Italy last year and wrestling for IWA, and that's really is down to Jordan, because he's been wrestling for IWA in Italy for quite a while now, and he sort of off his own back, he went to bat for me and said, you really need to bring RJ over. So they did last November. We flew out there together and did the IWA show, and I think if it all goes well, we'll be back out there in March of 2023 as well. So really looking forward to that. Really looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, have you been contacted by Roy or made, dare I say, Progress about any more appearances in the future?
No, not at the moment. I know. I think Progress are quite interested in me as a commentator. They've asked, Progress said to me a couple of times, would you like to come on and do some commentary? And I just haven't been able to make it work at the moment, just because of commitments to shows where I'm wrestling at the moment, and obviously then my daughter and stuff like that, and balancing up my life outside of wrestling as well.
Busy guy.
But my diary's open. If they know where I am, if they ever want me, then they know where I am. So
I'm sure somebody from Progress will be watching or listening to this. But we'll be back in a second, RJ, because I do need to throw a quick shout out to my good friends Slam Masters, and they've got a big show coming up this coming Sunday, the 2nd of August in Cardiff, and it's their Brawl at the Banking Hall. They got some of the best UK talents on that show, such as Mark Andrews, Lycos Kid, LA Taylor, Lizzie Evo, and so many more. Not forgetting Ace Austin, top US import, coming over on Sunday to face Nico Angelo. And that's going to be a fantastic match. So don't forget to get your tickets, get down to that show. There's going to be a terrific show. And if you go to their social pages, Slam Masters on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you'll be able to find out all the details about where you can get tickets there. But that's going to be a fantastic show. Tickets are still available. You've got all that fantastic UK talent. Man like DeRees as well. Bronco Brendan White. And so many more. So check it out. That's going to be in Cardiff this coming Sunday. But RJ, back to us. And I want to take it all the way back now. And I'm fascinated about when pro wrestling first came into your life as a fan. And kind of, you mentioned earlier Tatanka. And I think we were kind of watching wrestling around the same time, early 90s. And I was a fan of Tatanka as well. I still can't understand why he didn't win the title at WrestleMania 9. But never mind, that'll be one of them unsolved mysteries. But take us back to when pro wrestling first came into your life, and kind of what it was about it that kind of really pulled you in.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in the early 80s, so I had very hazy memories of World of Sport. I don't have really strong memories of World of Sport watching them. I do remember like Big Daddy and Giant Haystacks. It's kind of near the tail end of World of Sport, but I remember just being at a friend's house when I must have been about 8, 9 years old, something like that, and he had the WWF tape, and he put that on. It was like the first time I'd seen like American pro wrestling, and I was just really enamored with like Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, and then like WCW stars like Sting and Lex Luger and people like that. And I think for me, kind of what that connection was like that these guys look like superheroes. That's probably what did it for me. And as a kid, I read quite a lot of comics. As a kid, I was quite into comics. So seeing these guys who are virtual real life superheroes kind of was like, wow, that's, from the costumes to the music to the, all the action in the ring, that's kind of what switched me on to wrestling. I remember, I think the first videotape I owned was Survivor Series 1988. Survivor Series 1988, which had this starts with like this massive 10-man tag team match, like
20 guys,
that one, it was incredible. So that's kind of like my real earliest experience of wrestling. And then like heading into the late 80s, early 90s, like for anyone of my age, you might remember this, of like WCW being on ITV late night at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So you turn on and there'd be like a Vietnam drama called Tour of Duty, which was followed by a 5-minute student cooking program called Get Stuffed, which was then followed by WCW Worldwide. So
you've got a good memory.
Yeah, it's so clear. I remember it all. So we used to watch a lot of like WCW, me and my brother used to watch WCW Worldwide as well. So it was kind of, that's how we kind of watch wrestling. And then like, I just had friends who then started getting Sky, because believe it or not, virtually no one had Sky when I was a child.
Yeah,
only people with money had Sky. So like certain friends would like record and tape events off Sky of, for watching wrestling. So we'd get VHS. If anyone doesn't know what VHS is, go look it up. We'd watch a VHS of wrestling. So it was just a huge fan as a kid. Absolutely loved it as a kid.
And I'm guessing that your fandom kind of continued through your teenage years. But who were some of the larger than life characters that you really gravitated towards and maybe inspired you to one day take up the sport yourself?
So I loved, like I said, like Ultimate Warrior was absolutely one of my favorites as a kid. Loved Hulk Hogan, loved Sting. I think Sting was probably one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. I just loved everything about him, like I say, the face paint and the bright colors, the sort of the rock and roll music and everything like that. Was a huge fan of Sting. And I think some of my favorite, it's interesting though, because being a kid, some of the wrestlers I really hated because I was a kid have gone on to become some of my favorite wrestlers now. So like $1 Million Man, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, who I absolutely despised as a child because they were the bad guys. I absolutely love now, like watching their stuff back now. And thanks to 4FW, I actually, I got to meet the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, and I was put in the $1 Million Dream as well, which is like. And that's the photo I've got of me being choked out in the $1 Million Dream is probably one of the few photos I sent to my old school friends. Like, who remembers Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man? Check this out. Here's me being given the $1 Million Dream. So that was that was a great moment.
Absolutely. We've had a few people reach out to us already via this live stream, and although his name won't come up on screen, let me just check who this is. Rob Maltman. And I want to say a massive thank you to IJ Singh. He was in the first Brit Rest match that he ever saw, and during my career, he was a constant source of inspiration, advice, and class backstage throughout my career. Was a pleasure working with the man. So thank you, Rob, for reaching out there. Really appreciate it. And a friend of the show, George Booker, has said, Singh is king. I think we all know that. That's taken for granted. We've had a few more, and we will get to them throughout the course of this interview. But a couple of names that I want to bring up from your early career. And we're not going to kind of go into kind of who trained you in this, that, and the other. But Rockstar Spud and Stixx. Now, when I went through your career, those are two names that are kind of intertwined with yourself, certainly for the first 4 or 5 years, and then maybe dotted throughout a few years after that. But to tell us a bit about Spud and Stixx in particular, and why they were so important, or why all three of you were so important for each other's career, certainly in them early days.
Yeah, I mean, me and Stixx came out of the same wrestling school. So he and I, were trained at the same place. We knew each other really well. Like, we started hanging out, socially outside of wrestling, like going around to Stixx's house. Like, Stixx would often host like a pay-per-view party for a couple of us. Go in there, get our KFC and snacks and stuff, and sit down and watch a pay-per-view and things like that. And then that's how me and Stixx kind of forged our friendship, really, in and out of wrestling. And we were training. We'd moved training schools to a training school in Essex called Dropkicks, and a promoter called Brian Manelli came down, and he was looking for guys that could do some holiday circuits. That me and Stixx impressed him enough that he sort of said, "Yeah, and I'll take you guys on." So me and him then went and did a week with Brian. We learned loads on that. We learned about slowing down, taking our time with stuff, not going at 100 miles an hour. First night of those camps, we did the first holiday camp, and we went like 100 miles an hour. And Brian just sat us down and said, "Lads, we've got 7 more days of this. Like, you're gonna have to tone it down a bit, or else you're gonna be dead by night 2." So that really taught us a lot about that. And and then we were very lucky because, again, we both came up through the FWA, and then we had times in the FWA, our paths crossed, and we had some matches. And every time we were able to have a match in FWA, we always had a really, really enjoyable match together, like both in like FWA Academy and then on the main shows as well. So, and then it's just forged a friendship that's lasted, ages, that kind of took us all the way through to, 2014, when I had like my final match in Progress, and, I took my break for a while, and that, when they said, who are you going to wrestle? I said, it's going to be Stixx. So that was that. That's it. And me and Stixx have been friends ever since. And I'm desperate to go up to his training school. He's got such a great facility up in Nottingham at the moment. I just haven't had time in the last couple of years to get myself up there. So it's definitely on my list. And Spud, again, I met Spud. I met Spud. I must have met him in, again, early 2002, 2003, when me and Stixx were up in the Midlands. So me and Stixx, actually, even though we were kind of from the London area, we didn't get a lot of work around London and stuff like that. We actually started getting a lot of work in the Midlands when we first started it. So, we'd meet up and go do shows with a lot of Midlands guys. And obviously Spud was one of them as well. And I met him, and I think I kind of despised him a little bit when I first met him. I thought he was a bit of a knob, if I can say that. Was a bit of a knob at first. Yeah, and I was bang on because he's still a knob, and that's it. It's just a knob. No, you know, I think I feel really lucky actually to have met Spud, because there's very few who are as knowledgeable and passionate about wrestling as him, and I don't think many people know that actually. That he really gets wrestling. He really understands what it's about. He really understands what you do to make the best of yourself. And you know, he admits himself, you know, he said, you know, I probably went further than I ever had the right to go. I think that's wrong, because I think he's an incredible talent and he always deserved the success that he's had, and the life that he now has. And, you know, I think it's great now, you know, now that he's a writer on Raw now, in a position which is just fantastic. And that's kind of his new passion. And you know, what I love about him, he's not bitter about that. He's not bitter like, oh, you know, I'm not in the ring anymore. He knows what he wants. He knows what he wants to do. I think it's a shame because I think him in a coaching position would be incredible. I think him coaching people. And I was fortunate enough a couple of years ago when he was still with Impact. He came and did a seminar down at one of the London schools and did a seminar entirely based around his match with EC3, where he bled like loads. That match, if anyone's ever seen, I think was that it was a good match. Was it a UK match? Was it held in the UK?
I can't remember, but I do remember the match. Not sure where it's held though. More than likely.
Yeah, and he talked the students through that match and the importance about it, and about, you know, what made the match important, what made it, you know, the things that him and EC3 had put together to make it a really incredible match. And it was absolutely brilliant to listen to. The guy's such a fountain of knowledge in pro wrestling, and again, he's just one of those people I had chemistry with. There was just chemistry there. And yeah, he's just, like I say, just brilliant. Like I say, privileged to have been able to work with him as much as I did.
Absolutely. We've had one or two people reach out, and somebody is quite persistent and wants to know. Alex Stroud has been in touch via YouTube. Why didn't RJ do a chin lock?
Alex, I don't know. Alex is a little bit obsessed with chin locks. He even saw me at the show on Saturday and asked me backstage why I didn't do a chin lock, and I don't know. It's just not in my repertoire. What can I say? It's just not in my repertoire.
Not in your repertoire. Good answer. Good answer.
I was too busy thinking about the DDT. So that's, you know.
Exactly. We're going to be talking about the DDT in a moment. So, yeah. Let's say this coming weekend, it's a huge weekend of wrestling, and I mentioned Slam Masters. You've obviously got New Japan over here on the Saturday and the Sunday Raw Quest. But OnePW are returning on Saturday as well, RJ. I'm sure you've heard their first show back after 11 years in the Doncaster Dome. But you had a match for OnePW back in 2005, didn't you? I think you were part of a 6-man tag, if you can remember, 2005. But I mean, OnePW were always renowned for bringing over the big names, the big imports. And I mean, on the show that you were on 2005, you had Loki, AJ Styles, Al Snow, the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, Raven, and the best of British talent as well, Doug Williams, and so many more. And you would have been maybe only a few years into your career, 3 or 4 years. So to have been on a OnePW show must have been quite an honor, but also being on the same show with some of them big American names must have been a bit of a blast for you as well, a bit of an experience. What do you remember kind of thinking back to that show, being on that show with some of them names, and any kind of takeaway moments or memories for yourself?
I'm chuckling slightly because I don't mean this to try. I'm not trashing OnePW. I'm not at all. I really am not. And I sincerely wish them the best of luck. Come Saturday, they've got some incredible talent on their show. I'm very, very fond of pretty much all the talent they've got on their show. You know, people like Nathan Cruz, Scotty Rourke, you know, many other wrestlers who are working there. So I do wish them the best. I mean, it doesn't matter that I'm on a rival promotion on that day as well, but never mind. But OnePW, everyone. OnePW had a lot of notoriety, and I think I can say that without any kind of, you know, trying to gloss over anything. You know, through its time, you know, OnePW really was quite notorious for probably the wrong reasons. And so lots of wrestlers have these kind of great OnePW stories. And when everyone says to me, "Oh yeah, have you got any OnePW stories?" I was like, "Yeah, I worked the first show, and that was it." And that's where it ends. And it's quite funny because it was just. One, it felt like a really massive show. I'll say that. I mean, that was no doubt about that. It was called a Twist of Fate originally because Matt Hardy was going to be on there, and then of course he was pulled because he signed a new contract with WWE very suddenly, so it was renamed A Cruel Twist of Fate. You had some amazing American talent. I think Steve Corino was on that one.
He was.
Loki, Abyss. Corey Graves was on that one as Sterling James Keenan. So you had a lot of incredible talent on there as well. It was hugely overbooked though. There were so many wrestlers backstage because the card again was absolutely stacked. I had got the booking not from the main promoter. I had got it through someone else. And I kind of felt like the promoter didn't actually know who I was by the time I got there. And didn't seem to know anything about me. And I only tell this because I find it hilarious. Is that on their website at the time, back in 2005, leading into that show, they put pictures of everybody who was on the show on their website. And so you could see everyone, like Spud was on there because obviously I was in a match with Spud, Dragon Eye Soooo, who was on that show, Stevie Lynn, I was in the match with, James Ty, I was in the match with him as well. And then there's Ross Jordan, which was my previous wrestling name, and then a picture of a wrestler called Kid Regis. It wasn't even my picture. I will point out, Kid Regis is Caucasian, looked nothing like me in the slightest. I have no idea why OnePW used the picture of Kid Regis from my roster profile picture, but there it was. So I kind of got this sense of they didn't really know who I was, and I think I almost felt. I think I got booked by accident. I don't know. I had a blast though. I had a great time. Had a great match. Had a really fun 6-man, as you mentioned. Fun 6 with Spud. I was in there with Spud again, so I knew I was going to be okay. And then some people had great success out of OnePW. So again, I don't want people to watch this and think, "Oh, RJ's just trashing OnePW." I'm literally telling you how it was. For me. So it was
a fascinating story there.
But I know, like I said, I genuinely wish them all the best. I do hope it works really well, and I do hope I'm really gutted. There's a couple of matches like there's Nathan Cruz versus Alexander Hammerstone, and I think Hammerstone is incredible. I'm a big fan of his work over the last couple of years in MLW, because I don't know if people know this. Like around the pandemic or just before the pandemic, MLW was showing on one of the random channels on Sky. So I was watching it. I picked it up and I was watching it. So I started really getting into MLW. Hammerstone's fantastic. I'd love to see him versus Nathan Cruz because Nathan Cruz is such a good talent. That'd be absolutely amazing. Big fan, like I said, I mentioned Scotty Rourke earlier. I'm a massive fan of his now, and I look for that. But one of the ones as well I would love to watch is because again, another person I became a big fan of just before the pandemic and during was Ace Austin, who you mentioned earlier. Yeah, and it's going to be Ace Austin versus Robbie X. And if you are a fan of not just high flying X division style wrestling, but like at its maximum speed that you could possibly think of, I think that match will absolutely blow everybody away. I think that will be an incredible match. So yeah, I look forward to catching up with it when it comes on sort of on demand and be able to watch it.
Absolutely. I had Nathan Cruz on the show just a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about his upcoming match against Hammerstone, and check that one out if you want to get his thoughts and his feelings kind of leading up to that match. It's going to be for the MLW Heavyweight Championship. And of course, Robbie X is having the year of his life. 2022 is definitely his year. I want to talk to you about Lucha Britannia, because going through your kind of history, they were a fairly big part of your career, certainly from 2010 through to about 2014, and then sporadically in 2016. I think you were even there, Lucha Britannia world champion at one point. Yeah. And you were the Bengal Tiger, if I'm not mistaken. That's right. Was that your character, your gimmick for Lucha Britannia? Tell us a bit about your journey with Lucha Britannia, because I wasn't massively into UK indies around the time when they were kind of at their peak, and I think they're still putting on shows now, which is absolutely fantastic. But can you tell us a bit about your experience of working with Lucha?
Yeah, I had a great time working in Lucha Britannia. And I think what was interesting about Lucha Britannia was it was kind of niche, and it kind of almost sat outside of British wrestling because it wasn't really aimed at wrestling fans. It was aimed at the sort of cabaret market, which a lot more wrestling shows have dipped their toes into lately, into that kind of arts world, theatre, cabaret. You've got several promotions who are kind of, like I said, dipping into that arena now. And I think Lucha kind of was one of the first to do it. And we never really... The shows weren't presented as wrestling shows. They were presented as a really fun Friday night out, you know, to come enjoy yourself if you were a fan of cabaret, if you enjoyed, you know, those kind of things, because there was a mix of it. It wasn't just a straight wrestling show. We would have, you know, performance artists, and we'd have sort of, you know, flame swallowers and knife wielders and things like that to intersped with the wrestling. So it was a really, really unique promotion. And I was quite fortunate. I got into Lucha Britannia through another wrestler who was a friend, who, you know, sort of went to the Lucha Britannia promoter and sort of said, oh, you know, you should check out RJ. He'd like to come work. And I think one of the first gigs I ever did for Lucha Britannia, because when I first started at Lucha, which would have been like 2007, 2008, they did a lot of promotional work with corporations as well. So the first show I ever did for them was actually a corporate gig, which was Doritos. And Doritos had brought out this new range of like mashed together flavors. So it was like these two different flavors which they'd mashed together into one. And the way they wanted to promote this was through a wrestling show where several wrestlers were dressed in these like proper mascot costumes. So like one wrestler was dressed up as a bull representing the beef flavor, one was dressed up as a giant tomato, you know, a tomato wrestler, a cow wrestler, a pepper wrestler, and a chicken. It was a chicken wrestler as well. And these were all, you know, fairly well-known wrestlers on the British scene at the time. And so they had to stage matches wearing these mascot type costumes as well. And then, but they wanted kind of intersped with that some of the Lucha Britannia wrestlers as well. So I came on board as the Bengal Tiger, which was a gimmick I brought to Lucha Britannia. And just, you know, so that was the first gig I did. And then, like, you know, we did lots of corporate gigs around that time. So we were doing things like the Brit Awards after party. We were doing the Leeds and Reading Festival. We were doing, we were one of the first to do Download Festival. So we were one of the first, you know, promotions to wrestle at Download Festival before other promotions did that as well. And then eventually they, you know, they decided they wanted to run this as a monthly a wrestling show in London at their gallery in London. So we did it as a monthly show every third Friday of the month. We were running the show there. It was just a blast. I mean, the only downside was that, you know, the venue was quite small. It was small and intimate, which worked perfectly for the show. Yeah. But in the summer, it was the hottest. It was like wrestling in an oven. And especially since pretty much all of us were either in face paints or masks, it was absolutely horrendous. I loved the winter shows because it was so much colder. It actually balanced, being wrestling in the winter balanced out, but the summer was really horrendous. But we had a great time. We really loved the stuff we were doing there.
Yeah. And I want to briefly touch on Progress again, because you were a big part of their shows from 2012 through to through to 2018. But you did have some career highlights. So you mentioned the career versus career match versus Stixx, and then you did quite a bit of commentating for them as well. Part of the Bhangra Knights tag team, where you kind of had quite a few outings with the Bhangra Knights in the tag team ranks of Progress. And you're also part of the pre-show battle royal at Hello Wembley during the peak of Brit Rest in 2018. Do you have any, what would you say is your fondest memory, or some of your fondest memories of being part of Progress for all them years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like I said, you know, I missed the very first show due to personal reasons, which was a real bummer. So I was a bit gutted about that. But I was so warmly received, you know, upon my entry into Progress when I came in for the next couple of shows, and had a good couple of years there as a wrestler, which, you know, really, you know, culminated in that highlight of that career versus career match with Stixx, which was fantastic. Yeah. And then I kind of returned to Progress, you know, after a few years back as a commentator, as you mentioned. And actually, I really enjoyed my time as a commentator with Progress. Yeah. It was a really good experience seeing how that side of the business works. It wasn't something I'd done before. So it was a great one. I really enjoyed my time on commentary. There was such a great crew, and the technical crew at Progress are just so fantastic at what they do, and getting everything set up. And you know, I had some very nice comments about my commentary. People were very, very, you know, very generous in their comments about, and obviously some of that commentary ended up on the WWE Network, which was brilliant for me, you know. So it was great, you know, it was great to be, like, for a while, being one of the voices of Progress was a real honor. And I think one of the funniest moments though was one of the major title switches, and it was a really emotional and it was really emotional, really big moment on this title switch, and we blew our voices out. Me and Glenn just completely blew our voices because we were screaming and like, oh my god, this is amazing. You know, we completely blew our voices. And I think what was great about doing it live, you drew in from the energy of the crowd, so it was really easy to sound excited because the whole room was excited. Like, you know, it was real. You could feel electricity, and you know that's something, unless you were there, I don't know if people could really understand that. Well, you would, you know, around 3 o'clock, you know, just before 4 o'clock on a Sunday, and you can just feel the electricity in the room as the show's about to start. And it was so easy to be so animated on commentary when you get that kind of energy. So that was one particular moment, and we like I said, we blew our voices on it. And on that, I got a call 2 days later from Progress, and they were like, "You're not going to believe this. The audio file corrupted on that whole show." So, you know, and the funny, we then had to re-record the show in house rather than
not the same.
And it just wasn't the same. It was really, you know, I really wish people could have heard the original audio, because there was so much passion we put into it. And 2 days later, when, you know, you're in someone's living room re-recording with all the equipment again, I think we did a good job. I'm not sure people would be able to tell. I don't know if they could tell watching it back, but you know, when you just feel it inside, like it just isn't the same. So, and the other moment I absolutely loved on commentary, I'm a massive supporter of Zak Gibson. I think Zak Gibson's an incredible wrestler, incredible performer, brilliant on the microphone. And there's kind of a cardinal rule I have in wrestling as well, and I think most wrestlers are much better at this now, but for a long time they weren't. So in WWE, they've got all the money in the world to throw microphones around, right? But in British wrestling, there is a budget, and you cannot be throwing microphones around. Okay, we can't afford to damage microphones. So I had this real bugbear about, like, whenever things happened in the ring, when someone was on the mic and they dropped the mic or they'd throw the mic, and for a long time people were just chucking mics onto the canvas, and it used to drive me crazy. So Zak Gibson's doing his promo, and he'd been doing his, I'm the best, I'm Liverpool's number one, I'm UK's number one, I'm going to be the world's number one, which was an incredible promo because he just built on it every show. And the babyfaces just started the match hot, and you know, straight away Zak Gibson takes a punch, but he's such a pro, he holds onto the mic and he protects the mic. As he hits the canvas, he's got hold of the mic and he's looking after it. Now the problem was that we were always instructed on commentary, they always said on commentary, start talking when the bell rings. So the bell rings, that's our cue, because they can line up the audio. It's much easier to line up the audio because they just wait for the bell to ring, and that's when, you know, you sync your audio up. So the bell rings, Zak Gibson gets hit, he's holding the microphone. I am so busy, like, in awe that he's such a professional, he's holding the mic, and I'm nudging Glenn like, oh my god, did you see that? He's still got the microphone. And I realise we're supposed to be talking and we're supposed to be starting the commentary. So there's this slight pause where I'm busy, like, freaking out that Zak Gibson's so good at holding a microphone that I forgot we actually should have been recording the audio. So I very quickly started going out, and here we are, ladies and gentlemen, we're back inside the Progress Center, and you know, went as far as I could. So that was some of my favourite moments, definitely at you know, being on commentary.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I want to talk to you a bit about tag team wrestling now, because you've been part of some notable tag teams over the years. We mentioned Jordan Saeed, your current tag team partner, Sunset Skip, one half of the Strong Dads, of course, and the Bangor Knights, and many more throughout your career. But what is it about tag team wrestling that you kind of love, will always hold a very close place in your heart, then, RJ? Because again, I grew up in an era where tag team wrestling was such a big part of pro wrestling. So again, you know, I grew up watching, you know, I go back to that Survivor Series 88 thing where you've got the opening match is, you know, there's 5 tag teams on either side of the ring, and like that's unheard of now. That's virtually unheard of. Imagine having just one. I don't think there's that many teams in WWE. Do you know what I mean? Like, to even and they're all, and, you know, again, I grew up in an era where tag teams wore the same costumes, they wore the same outfits together, they wore the same gear, they matched each other. They weren't just two guys who were thrown together from random. They were people who actually wrestled as tag teams, and that's such a rarity now to see that. And well, you know, it's not as common, shall we say. Yeah. And also, if you look at WCW around that time, WCW at the time had such a deep tag division in the early 90s. They had 2 separate belts. They had the US tag titles and they had the World Tag Team titles, and actually they made both equally as important. Even though, you know, world was above US, the US tag titles were still held in high regard, and like actually these are hugely important to the tag division. So I think I was very fortunate to grow up in that era where tag teams
were given such a high placement. So, you know, I grew up watching, you know, Midnight Express and the Steiners and the Hart Foundation and the British Bulldogs and the Fabulous Rougeos, you know, the Brainbusters and, you know, Four Horsemen. So yeah, it's always been ingrained in me that my love of tag wrestling. I think there's so many good stories that you can tell with tag wrestling that you can't tell in a singles contest. And I think
it's the best gimmick match, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's the best gimmick match.
Yeah, there's great stuff you can do with it. So I think it's, you know, it's an underappreciated style of wrestling because it's not easy to do. You do have to, and the important thing with tag wrestling is, any younger wrestlers out here who are listening to this, you have to follow the rules of tag wrestling. Tag matches work best when you follow the rules, and the audience should know the rules. Because it should be simple, but if you stick to those rules, that's what makes the match good. And it's not about just throwing, oh, it doesn't matter, we'll just do whatever at the end of the match. That's not, and you know, it's funny enough, Stixx wrote a massive status about this just 2 days ago. I think he wrote this. So if you want to, making tag matches are great if you follow that, you follow those rules to that.
Yeah, I remember that post from Stixx, just a few days ago, and he said, follow the rules all the way through to the end of the match. Don't let it break down 5 minutes from the end. I'm just going to flash up some pictures here. It's yourself and Sunset there. Look at that, looking amazing. Strong dads there, and glasses, and of course, another picture of yourself and Jordan Saeed. Nice. A formidable tag team. Let's talk about some of the moves that you're renowned for. Then, RJ, we've got the. How do you pronounce this move?
The ethnic submission.
The ethnic submission. And of course, you are the king of the DDTs.
Yes.
So the DDT is your. Tell us about your affinity with those two moves, or kind of how they became part of your repertoire, because they have been moves that. Kind of, especially, you know, you've named them the ethnic submission, and you're the king of DDTs. They are synonymous with you. Tell us about your love for those two moves in particular.
I mean, the ethnic submission was a bit of a joke, really. Like, it started as a joke, but it's one of my moves because it's quite an easy move to apply as well. Yeah. It's very visual. It looks painful. It's, you know, it's great. And it came about because I just couldn't help but notice. You know, over the years, particularly in WWF, the camel clutch, given it its proper name, if we're to give it its proper name, the camel clutch was given to a very, very unique set of wrestlers, shall we say, usually foreign heels. If you track WWF through the 80s, through the 90s, pretty much every foreign heel that they ever had was given the camel clutch as a finisher. So I think I just made a joke to someone and said it's like, yes, only like people of any kind of, you know, ethnic origin are the ones who hit the submission on people. So I just started. I think when I got to Progress, when I went to Progress, I named it the ethnic submission. And that's kind of when I started calling it that and started using it as that, as a bit of a joke, which I think everybody's hopefully in on. But it is a great move. It's a great move as well. You know, made famous by the Iron Sheik, of course. And it's a great, you know, it's still a great submission finish, as it were. And the DDT, actually, I mean, the DDT is a very recent thing. Since I'd say 2022 is kind of when I've really been using the DDT as a finish. Because this may surprise someone, the DDT, surprise many, I should say, but the DDT is actually a finish. It was my favorite move as a kid. Huge fan of Jake Roberts using it. Arn Anderson, Raven obviously carried it on as well. So the Fabulous Freebirds. I feel like I'm on my way to naming my top DDTs here. I probably have just named mine. If that was a question anyone was going to ask, what are my top DDTs? I've probably just named them in order there. You know, Jake the Snake, Arn Anderson, Raven.
There was a question actually. Top 5 DDTs are on your own, yeah.
I'm answering it now. So there you go. So, you know, number one, Jake the Snake. You know, not the innovator. For anybody who didn't know that, Jake wasn't the innovator of the DDT. He did discover it by accident, but he wasn't the first to use it. There's actually I believe it was a Mexican wrestler called Black Gordman, and he was actually the first one to actually hit that move. Used it as a finisher as well. So, but Jake Roberts sort of famously discovered it by accident, and then sort of became its most famous user. And then Arn Anderson, of course, and I think Arn Anderson took it from Jake. He sort of said, you know, he based his, had more of a snap to it though. So, you know, Arn went for the snap version. Raven, of course, put his own spin on it as well. The even flow DDT, which was great. But again, going back to the Fabulous Freebirds, you know, Terry got pardon me, Jimmy Garvin, I should say, sorry. Jimmy Garvin had a really fantastic DDT, really underrated is his one, and Michael Hayes as well. They used it to great effect. And if you watch WCW in the early 90s, the DDT was huge. Like, people loved the DDT. Like, you know, there was a pay-per-view. I think it was it may have even been, it's Halloween Havoc 90 or 91. It's the one where the Black Scorpion comes along and kidnaps a stagehand. If you watch that, both Arn Anderson and the Freebirds in separate matches are heels, and yet when they go for the DDT, the crowd just rise. Like, they love the DDT. And it's like the original move out of nowhere, if you want to call it that. You know, it's the original move that just could be snapped on anyone and hit on anyone at all.
Hit anywhere, anytime.
Absolutely, anywhere,
on
anytime.
Anybody.
Exactly. And I just kind of wanted to make it my mission to kind of show people that this, you know, like I said, as a kid, it was my favorite move. I feel like I've spent 20 years wasted not using it. And so I thought now is the time, you know, to bring this move back and actually show everyone it is a great finish. So yeah, I'm really, really, really proud to be. And what's been really great is just having wrestlers come backstage and say, I love the fact, I love you using the DDT as a finish. And I was like, good, because the DDT is a finish. That's why.
Absolutely, and it's one of the greatest finishing moves of all time. And like I say, just when Jake Roberts used to hit it in the 80s and the 90s, you just knew that was the end of the match. There was no kicking out. There was no, you know, kick out on the 2.5, 2 3/4. That was the finish. And like I say, it's been wasted or bastardized over all these years, and now you've brought it back and given it the prominence that it deserves. Another question that came through to us before we went live today, RJ, from Richard Stubbs. Do you feel that you play a better face or a heel character? And now I know you more as a heel, but I'm sure that there are promotions out there you do perform as a face, and you've probably performed face many, many times over your years. Do you prefer playing a face or a heel?
Either. And that sounds really like it is. I'm totally in the middle. Whatever a promotion needs. If they want me to be a face, I will be the greatest hero that promotion has ever seen. If they want me to be a heel, I will be the biggest villain that promotion's ever seen. I think possibly that's part of my my appeal to promoters is that I am flexible in that regard. Yeah. And you know, over my years, I've come across wrestlers and they're like, "Oh, I'm not really good at playing face. Or I'm only really good as a heel," and they're not. Or they say, "Oh, I'm not really comfortable doing that." I will do what you need me to do. I feel comfortable enough in what I do and what promotions need me to be that I can adapt what I do to be either one. So I enjoy both equally. I think both have their pluses. So, you know, just whichever they decide on the day. I mean, the only thing I'd say is my daughter has started to come to a few shows now. And I've been a face on the shows she has been to, so I would probably just be a little bit cautious about, you know, if I was a heel, whether she would be coming to that show, because I don't think she needs to see me like that. So
good point. And another question. This is quite an interesting question from an anonymous RJ Singh fan. You may have guessed who might have sent this in, but he goes by the anonymous fan. What size are your boots? I have no idea as to the context of this, but is
he Sundown Zip? Is that who sent this one?
Yeah, you might be headed down the right path there. Yeah,
I can't divulge really, because it's one of those hilarious wrestling stories. But it was basically during it really is too complicated to explain. But Sunset Skip is one of the he's about as tactful as a wrecking ball going straight through the side of a building at times. And during a quite serious conversation I'm having with a promoter, like I said, I can't really go into the backstory. I'm having quite serious about another wrestler who potentially wasn't going to be wrestling again, and then just from the front of the car, Sunset Skip turns around and goes, "Find out what size his boots are." So yeah, that's where that come from, and it's you know, we've explained it to a few people, but it's yeah. Thanks for that, Skip. So,
brilliant.
Well done.
Of course, the anonymous fan, of course.
Sorry,
we're not saying that it's anybody in particular, but thanks for sending it in, Skip. And I'd say one of the final questions from me. We spoke earlier about some of the amazing kind of UK talent, and certainly in the last 12 months there's been this phenomenal crop of young talent that have kind of really hit the scene. There might have been bubbling under the surface before the pandemic. After the pandemic, they really rose to prominence. not just across the UK, but making their names across Europe and even further afield. But any of these newer wrestlers that you quite fancy getting in the ring with that you haven't done so already, and any that have caught your eye over the last year or so, RJ?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to just tie into that as well, as about not forgetting some of the underrated talent. I think, when I look at there's people like who I still think should be everywhere. People like Roy Johnson, who looks incredible at the moment because he's getting ready for a bodybuilding competition. He looks incredible. Yeston Reese, again, another really incredible talent. He looks absolutely amazing. And I think should be on every show as well. Big T, who unfortunately is taking a little bit of a hiatus at the moment. So, but the guy's nearly 7 foot tall. How he's not on every show as your monster is beyond me. But I mean, there's, and what I am quite fortunate in is that a lot of the younger talent I have had the opportunity to work with at the moment. So, Mark True and Kieran Lacey had a tag match with those guys as well. They're really, really promising young talents as well. So, I'd be really happy to get back in, get in the ring with them again. I say Pro Wrestling East, I recently had a match with Scotty Rourke, which was phenomenal. I really enjoyed working with Scotty. He's so promising as a talent. Alexander Roth, we've been in the ring a couple of times now. He's another great talent. Hari Singh, of course, who we talked at the very start of this as well. Harry's, is an incredible talent to look out for as well. So, I'd love to work with any newer talents at the moment. Robbie X, I haven't worked with Robbie X since before the pandemic, and he's been incredible. Would really relish the chance to work with him. Leon Slater, I think, is a name on everybody's lips right now. Yeah, I was really, I was fortunate enough to, again, on the last Everything Patterned, I managed to have a chat with Leon Slater. And for such a young person with a great head on his shoulders, really proving himself to be a great talent at the moment. So, him as well. But I think, so there's so much good talent out there, and I'd be more than happy to get in the ring with any of them, I think.
Absolutely. We're going to be looking at some of your up-and-coming matches very, very soon. I think there's some pretty hot talent on some of those cards, certainly, that you'll be facing. But just kind of looking at your 21 years in the business in RJ, are there any particular proudest moments that really stand out? If you were to kind of pinpoint, one or two of your proudest moments in your 20-plus year career, could you, and what would they be? Yeah,
I mean, I think it was... I think when I won the FWA flyweight title, because it was like I was like the inaugural. I was the inaugural FWA flyweight champion. That was a really proud moment because the company had put some faith in me to kind of, they just wanted, they thought, they'd said, we're going to start up like a flyweight division, which will be our cruiserweight division. So I think having that opportunity. And again, the final was a match against Spud, so again it was made even more amazing by the fact that me and Spud got to wrestle in that final match. And then that was like the first time a company had also then let me do a heel turn, and it was the first time I'd had like another run as a heel. So that was really great. That was one of my proudest moments. Of course, the 3-way dance I had with Spud and Aviv Mayan back in 2005 at the Coventry Sky Dome, which was a massive moment for me. And again, that's one of my proudest matches. Watching that one back, definitely a huge proud moment for me. Again, I keep coming back to it, but the career versus career match, including the entrance, which was about 12 minutes long, the huge entrance we had at Progress, and I always want to thank Progress for that, because they gave me this opportunity, this really fantastic entrance, followed by kind of again a match that I was kind of me and Stixx were allowed to kind of go all out on that one as well. So, and then just very recently, really proud moment. Like I said, I had Jasmine come watch me at a match. And at the end of the match, won the match with the DDT, and then Jasmine got in the ring with me, and I've got this wonderful photo of me and Jasmine, me holding up Jasmine on my arms. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more moments like that, hopefully.
Absolutely. Now, before we let you go, there's an opportunity for you to throw out to any of my listeners, viewers that are watching or listening to this interview with RJ Singh, your socials. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, say hi, find out more about RJ Singh, watch some of your matches, where can they reach out to you and find out more than RJ?
Well, I've got a social media page on all the major ones. So again, if you search RJ Singh on Facebook, you can find my Facebook page there, which is somewhere down there. I've also on Twitter as RJ Singh is King. It's probably the best place to find me. On Instagram as King RJ Singh. as well. I'm on TikTok as RJ Singh, but I haven't posted anything on there. So, you know, it's one of those cool things kids do, and I haven't really got a clue what it's about. So, but apparently it's cool to have a TikTok account. So you never know. I think I'll just use my TikTok account to just post DDT videos. I think it'll just be exclusively DDT videos. That's it.
That's all you need to do. I'll just post rubbish up on mine, get a few views, but DDT videos are certainly watch those.
You got to have a niche market on TikTok, right? You got to have
absolutely. I don't think there's anybody posting DDT videos, so you might have a winner there. Let's have a quick look at some of your up and coming matches, and I think you've got a match this coming weekend against Benjamin Black for Sovereign. First reign there. That should be a really, really fun match. And then a little bit further ahead in the future, the return of Hammerlock, and you're going to be in a four-way for the junior heavyweight fatal four-way match versus Ian Skinner, Maverick Mayhew, and Benny Naito. Some pretty tasty matches to look forward to there, RJ.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So again, you know, Benjamin Black, young talent coming out. I believe he's coming out of the Rev Pro school down in Portsmouth as well. So he's really intense from what I've seen of Benjamin Black so far. And again, you know, for Soft Pro, I mean, so you know, this coming weekend is going to be a huge weekend for wrestling in Britain as well. Again, as you mentioned, we've got Rev Pro with Royal Quest, we've got OnePW making their return, and we've got Soft Pro making their debut show as well. So I'm really hugely honoured to be part of that Soft Pro debut show. You know, Shotty Horror, who's sort of spearheading the promotion. As soon as he announced Soft Pro, he messaged me straight away and said, "Oh, I've got to have the King on the show. Do you want to be a part of it?" So I jumped at the opportunity, and it's looking, you know, that Soft Pro card is looking to be absolutely stacked. So I think anyone in the Manchester area is going to be in for a real treat. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the return of Hammerlock at the end of the month. I am, by the looks of that graphic, I am the senior heavyweight in the junior heavyweight match. I jokingly said, I think I said on Facebook jokingly, I said, I think I taught all three of those lads in year 6. But no, I'm looking forward to that. I like, you know, like I said, I like being tested. I'm not a wrestler who wants to just sit on his laurels and just, you know, be lazy. I like being tested in matches. So I think that four-way will certainly be that kind of test.
Absolutely. But before we let you go, I just want to announce to everybody that's watching or listening who my next 3 guests are going to be on Wrestling with Johners to start the month of October. First of all, I've got the Wild Boar, Mike Hitchman, come in on the show next Thursday the 6th of October, 8 p.m. UK time, live on Wrestling with Johners. That's an interview you're not going to want to miss. And then the following week, I've got Mike Bird, another Mike Bird, legend of the UK business, another legend.
Symbol.
There we go. Monday, the 10th of October, 8 p.m. UK live. Mike doesn't do many podcast interviews, so if you want to hear from the horse's mouth, you've got to tune into Wrestling with Johners. That's going to be Mike Bird on Monday the 10th. And then we'll have a few other guests come on, but this is another one towards the end of the month. I've got Ollie Blake coming on the show. You may well have seen him on NXT UK. He's doing some great things on the UK Indies. Monday the 24th of October, Ollie Blake is going to be a live guest on Wrestling with Johners. So some good names coming on the show in the month of October there, RJ.
Excellent. I mean, there's a couple of great names. There. Mike Bird, a very big fan of incredible in-ring talent. So yeah, that'll be a great interview.
There we go. But RJ Singh, it's been phenomenal speaking to you for an hour and 15 minutes or so, but getting to hear your career, your journey in the wrestling business. But I want to thank you so much for your time, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.